new pad of Derwent Lightfast Paper, which arrived a couple of days ago, and I'm just going to take you through some of the tests that I put paper through to make sure that it's going to work for my techniques with coloured pencil. This is 100% cotton, it's hot pressed, it's 300 grams, 140 pounds weight, it's acid free, and it's called Natural White. So that all sounds good to me. Let's start the tests. Opening it up reveals that it's sealed along one edge, the narrow edge, and therefore it's not a block. So those of you who are watercolourists may need to take the paper out and stretch it before using it. And it is very creamy, although it's called Natural White. This is Fabriano Classico 5 old stock that I've been using for years and years, and this is only 50% cotton, I know, and it has internal whiteness, but I do like the whiteness of this. But that does show how creamy this paper is. But if you like a creamy paper, that's fine. So just to walk you through some of the tests that I do on a paper, the most important is the pressure test, this I call a tear test. And with this, I'm pressing backwards and forwards over the same spot very, very heavily. And the paper shouldn't tear, it shouldn't give way at all. I've done it 3 times over this spot now, repeatedly, and it's absolutely fine. The surface has held, so that's very good. The second test is using an HB graphite pencil. These are the Derwent graphic ones, which I love, and it takes the graphite well. There's not too much resist from size or finish on the surface of the paper. It did reveal 1 or 2 tiny blemishes, which can be the fibres in the paper, as it is 100% cotton. So just need to watch out for those. This next test is a single coloured pencil, and I've pressed heavily and very lightly, and it's very easy to achieve a really nice smooth shading. I'm using Faber-Castell Polychromos here, as although this paper was manufactured primarily for the Derwent Lightfast, which are lovely, they're not my pencil for choice for everything, because particularly the greens are much better in the Faber-Castell, and I like the hardness of the Faber-Castell. But they're both oil-based pencils, so they work well together. In this next test, I've layered up 6 layers of colour pencil, starting with 181 Payne's Grey, and then moving through 278 Chrome Oxide Green, 174 Chromium Green Opaque, and then I have used the Derwent Lightfast Forest, which I love as a sort of bright mid-green in the mix, and then 168 and Earth Green and 170 May Green, all layered up, and they produce a lovely smooth colour mix. The paper is more or less saturated now, so I could get many more layers on top of that, but it's gone down beautifully smoothly and I'm very pleased. This next test is 12 layers. So in order to achieve this, because the previous test saturated in 6 layers with my pressure, because I press fairly heavily, I've decided to press very lightly, and I built up 12 layers fine and achieved a lighter mix but smooth application of colour. In this next test, I'm using a battery operated eraser to lift off graphite, which it does very well, getting right back to the paper without any damage to the surface of the paper, so that's excellent. This next test, I've used the battery operator eraser on a single layer of coloured pencil, and it's lifted most of it off, but not completely, but that was ever thus with coloured pencil. This test is using kneadable eraser, which is this nice squidgy eraser, and it lifts off quite well the colour, and it doesn't damage the surface of the paper. With some cheaper makes or not so good makes like Botanical Ultra Smooth, the surface of the paper will lift off when doing this, which you don't want, or you get little fibres loosened up on the surface, and you don't want that either. The next two tests, I'm using Solvent. So the first one is alcohol, an alcohol-based solvent. And for this I've used the Winsor & Newton Pro Marker, which contains a clear alcohol blender. And this melts the coloured pencil beautifully, and I ended up with a really nice smooth underpainting, so that's excellent. The second solvent I've used here is baby oil, which I put in a pen like this so that I can apply just the right amount, because you don't want it swamping the paper. Because this is a paraffin wax and it doesn't dry immediately, the alcohol dries within seconds, but the baby oil stays waxy for some days on the surface, so you don't want too much. So this is an empty Copic marker, and I filled that with baby oil. And then this melts the colour, and as you can see, it brightens the colour a bit more than the alcohol-based solvent. This final test, final two tests actually, this one is using Frisk film or sticky back plastic, and I'll just put some more colour down quickly, and I'm just going to use the pad of my finger. This is low tack sticky back plastic, so it lifts off colour and it doesn't damage the surface of the paper. And here I'm just using a sharp point, and again you can see it's lifted off the colour well without damaging the paper, which is brilliant. And the final test is using an embossing tool. I'm using the Pergamano 0.5 embossing tool, which has a really nice fine rounded point. And I use this a lot for veins and textures and hairs. It's a very useful tool, and it works very well on here. It hasn't torn the paper surface. The paper feels quite soft, but I'm actually working on top of the whole pad, so I think I would recommend that if you are doing finish work, you take a sheet off and use it with maybe just one sheet underneath on your drawing board rather than the whole pad. But overall, with all the tests, I'm very pleased with this paper. It works well. I'd enjoy working on it. My only provisos are, one, it's a bit too creamy for me, but it is lovely to work on. And the second thing is that it's very expensive. The other makes to compare it with would be makes like Sanders Waterford, which is a good make and lots of people use, Global Fluid, Winsor & Newton Aquarelle, and Arche, which again is creamy. And these all work out for the same size pad. This is 12 by 16 inches, somewhere between 34 and 46 pounds. This pad was 62 pounds, so sharp intake of breath there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed going through these tests with me, and happy colouring in.